So the question that Dina has asked is baffles many minds, and for ages people always wonder whether the prayers are answered or not, and if they are answering, then what actually the mechanism behind the answering of the prayers. Let's first look at it, what is the prayer is all about. Prayer is our intent. Prayer is we are projecting our consciousness in the environment to change it. That is what is a prayer is about. So when we are praying for something to change by our consciousness, by just mere thinking, then does this thing can change or not. The first thing, let's look at this, the thought. Whether the thought or energy or not, because any change in the atmosphere, in the environment, needs a energetic impression, energetic force, or some kind of a energetic manifestation. So if thought is not energy, then there will be no manifestation in the environment. So if we look at the B2C experiment, the B2C experiment is brain to computer experiment, which is happening all over the world for last few years to convert the impulses of the thoughts into a concrete electrical pulses, which can be translated into the energy signal form, which can operate the external machine. Whether it happens or not, you can go on the Google and check. B2C, the brain to computer interface, has been successfully tested all over the world, and when a brain waves, the brain thoughts can be converted into the physical energetic output. It means that it is possible to think hard, think focused, and create a sufficient energy to create the substantial change in the environment. So this is the first part of the scientific explanation of the thinking can change the atmosphere. Now we will come to this another question, that if so is the thing, can this thought travel through the space and time and reach to the destination where change is intended? So in a normal man's terms, can my prayers as a thought, as a feeling, can transfer or can travel to hundreds or thousands or whatever miles away, where my beloved one, my friend or my colleague is needing a help from me, and am I sending my prayers? The first thing, whether my thoughts, my prayers will travel to that person or not. We'll see later on whether they create a change or not. So if for this purpose I would like to cite you a scientific experimentation which is happening for many years in the scientific world. This is called the John Bell's experiment. In Einstein's theory, that when you observe a particle, when you study an atom or any particle, then whatever point of a space or time, the property of that particle remains the same. But John Bell in 1960 proposed that the reaction, the observation of the particle is not fixed in the space and time, but it changes from observer to observer. It means that the particle reacts to the different observer in different ways, so his property will also change accordingly. So that is how, and this is something which really shaken the many bastions of physics theory which Einstein has proposed, but there was not enough proof that point of a time, because to prove this theory of John Bell, they needed a tremendous amount of the random data. Something called the random data was required to prove this theory, and that time the computers were not so powerful to create that amount of the random data. So after, when the computers in the 21st century become faster and much powerful, then the people who were pursuing John Bell's theory for many years decided to give the final try, and for a few years they tried, and 2014 they finally come up and they proved that the John Bell's theory is right. Now I'll explain what is John Bell's theory. You can go on the Google and check out what is John Bell's theory is all about. So John Bell's theory proposes the next theorem, which again it is called the spooky effect. The spooky effect is about if the two particles any two particles, say suppose two atoms are entangled with each other. Entangled in the sense what? If they are suppose derived from the same molecule, if sometimes the two atoms share the same electrons, or if two atoms have interacted with each other for in some way or other, they are called the entangled atoms or entangled particles. Now if suppose these two atoms, these two particles are separated in the space many miles away, many millions miles away, then obviously any effect in the one particle will have any effect on another particle only if the effect is traveling through the space. Now if anything travels through the space, will be the maximum speed will be of the light, and the maximum speed of the light is 3 lakhs km per second. It means that suppose this one particle is 10 millions away from another particle, then it will take few seconds for the effect from this particle to travel to another particle. Also it will depend whether that effect has that much of power or not, that much force or not to travel through the space. Now John Bell says it is not the way it happens. It say the corresponding change in one particle will have the same corresponding change into another particle. So how does it travel then? Instantly. He say it happens instantly. So if it is happening instantly, then it is not traveling through the space, but that effect is traveling through another dimension. Change in one particle, there is instantly there is a corresponding change into another particle, and this change occurs simultaneously and through the dimension of the time. Now because it happens in the dimension time, that's why happening simultaneously. Now the question is, if it is so, then such is the power, such is a connection between the two particles. So if there is a one consciousness thinking about at one place, and 1,000 miles away another consciousness is connected with this consciousness, then won't there will be some kind of effect of one consciousness into another? And as I explained in the beginning, the thought is an energy. If thought is an energy, then this will have some kind of impression into another consciousness. So if the two consciousnesses are entangled at two different spaces, one is thinking anything, there will be the corresponding change must be happening into another consciousness at one point of a time. So this is the way the thoughts can travel, the thoughts can get connected at a different point of a time. It is obviously because if there is effect between the two particles can happen at a longer distance, and whatever distance they are, then the consciousness should also happen, because thought is the energy, consciousness is also the energy, another form of the existence like the particles. Now we'll coming back to this, if we understand the thought is energy and the two spaces, two consciousness are connected to the thoughts according to John Bell's experimentation, then I would like to cite is that when we pray, what we are trying to create, when we are praying, then we are trying to create the intent, we are trying to impose our thoughts into the environment to create certain amount of a change which will be a positive change in the favor of protecting the life, creating the positive effect, creating certain kind of benefit. Now this energy will definitely going to affect all those factors which can create the change. For example, if that person is suffering for the illness, then this energy of the thoughts, of the intents, of the consciousness will try to connect with those factors which is creating the illness in this person's life, and definitely try to help him out to recover faster. It doesn't mean that he doesn't require any kind of a medicine or not. Of course he must be taking some medicine or some kind of other treatment, but the question is that, as we know, and even a doctor says that the certain kind of treatment is faster in some people and the same treatment is slower in other people. Many people don't respond to certain kind of a treatment. So the idea is to how this treatment get facilitated, get faster, most effective by the focusing of the thoughts which is transmitted from one person in form of a prayers to another person, and that is how this person get recovered faster than the other person or in other circumstances. And this is, some people say it's a miracle, some people would call it is some kind of divine act, but it is neither a divine act, it is neither a magical act or some kind of a supernatural act, but it is a simple natural principle of transporting energy from one part of the consciousness to another, as John Bell's experiment says, and creating the corresponding effect simultaneously through the dimension of the time. That is what is John Bell's experiment as well. And to understand that the thought is not a mere thought, or this is not a mere mental impression, but is a definite physical energy which can be focused and can be created a concentrated dose and can be transported and can be made effective. It means that thoughts alone can also facilitate the changes in the atmosphere, and that is the power of prayers. If we understand, then we know that why prayers work, why prayers, there is a power behind the prayers, and why, despite the fact that a lot of people have experienced the power of prayers in their lives, it has changed their lives in terms of the illness, in terms of the financial problems, in terms of miraculous escape from the accident, or because there is a definite rational, there is a definite scientific reason, the nature's law is behind it. That's why it works. It doesn't work just because somebody has thought about it, or just with somebody has created the superstitious thoughts about it. It's not about that. When you go into the detail and try to connect the various scientific fact behind this, how it functions, then we will be able to understand. And finally, at the end of the day, what is the purpose of the life on this earth is to know the reality of all the phenomena in this universe. So anything which happens and concretely happen has to have a reason, and if we find out the reason, we know the reality. By knowing the reality, we can create the better reality.